Good day, guys. This is Anthony Hobkirk from the Discipleship School of Ministry. Do you find that sometimes you get so caught up in your own plans and your busyness that you miss out on the most important things in life? Today, I want to talk to you about a guy we all know too well, Judas Iscariot. When we read John 18, we generally focus on the great amount of events that happened there. And there really is a lot because it's a very busy chapter. First, Judas betrayed Jesus. Then, Peter goes all John Wick and cuts off a guy's ear. Jesus heals that guy. Jesus is arrested and questioned by the high priest. Peter denies Jesus and the rooster crows. Jesus goes before Pilate, who follows his COVID-19 protocols to the T by washing his hands in an attempt to be somehow innocent of the events unfolding. And in the end, the crowd asks for Jesus to be crucified in Barabbas' place. If there was a prize for the busiest and historically most important chapter in the Bible, I'm quite sure that John 18 would be in the top 5. But there is something that and I think some of you too, have missed. And it's there right in the beginning of the chapter. In verse 1 to 3 we read, "When Jesus had spoken these words, he went out with his disciples over the brook Kidron, where there was a garden, which he and his disciples entered. And Judas, who betrayed him, also knew the place, for Jesus often met there with his disciples. Then Judas, having received a detachment of troops and officers from the chief priests and Pharisees, came there with lanterns, torches, and weapons. Now I know that at this stage the devil had already taken hold of Judas, and he was no longer in control of his actions. But we read that Judas went missing out on spending time with Jesus because he was too busy organizing his capture." Can you imagine that? Jesus, the Son of God, right there, and Judas is too busy making other plans? Talk about priorities gone wrong. But do you know what? Judas isn't the only person that we read about in the Bible missing out on spending time with Jesus. In fact, if we look back a little in the story of Jesus, we find in Luke 10 the very well-known story of Mary and Martha. Remember those sisters of Lazarus? Martha was busy, while Mary sat at Jesus' feet soaking up his wisdom. Martha was that person who always had to be multitasking, constantly juggling responsibilities. She was probably organizing the world's first church fundraiser while tidying up the house, making sure which gogo would bake the cakes, which auntie would make the biryani, or which oom would be braaiing the boerewors. Meanwhile, Mary was sitting there, cool as a cucumber, hanging on to every word that Jesus said. And the thing that always makes me very sad about Martha's story is the fact that what she was doing was important. The church does need funds, and we need to honor God with the state of our houses. It was just not the most important thing at that time, and she missed it. Now, here's the point I want to make. Sometimes we become so consumed by our own plans and busyness that we miss out on the presence of God that is right in front of us. We're like Judas, organizing schemes, or like Martha, making sure that the church is vacuumed instead of spending quality time with Jesus. We get so busy with the things of God that we make no time for the God of the things. We live in a world that constantly bombards us with distractions. In fact, it has been proven that there has never been a time in the history of the world where humans have been more busy than right now. Our smartphones, social media, never-ending to-do lists, they all shout for attention. And in the midst of all this chaos, we can lose sight of what truly matters. I once knew a guy who was so busy with his smartphone that he walked right into a lamppost. Can you imagine that? He missed out on the beauty around him and on seeing the lamppost because he was too busy scrolling through his Facebook feeds. So, here's the challenge for all of us today. Let's prioritize our relationships with God before everything else. Let's create space in our lives to sit at His feet, to listen to His voice, and to experience His presence. Let us not be like Judas and Martha, missing out on the divine encounter that's right in front of us. It might be so close that we can actually touch it. Let us be like Mary, who recognized the importance of being present with Jesus. Embrace the moment, prioritize your relationship with God, and let His presence bring joy, peace, and purpose into your life. Let's make a commitment today, right here and right now, to turn away from our distractions, turn off the noise, even though it sometimes seems so important, and let us make time to spend dedicated time with Jesus. It might mean waking up a little early in the morning or setting a specific time during the day. Whatever works for you, make it a non-negotiable appointment with the Creator of the universe. And here's the challenge. I want you to think of one thing, just one, that you can eliminate or reduce in your life to create more time and space for God. Maybe it's just getting up that 30 minutes earlier, or getting rid of the mindless scrolling on YouTube, or watching a soap opera, or perhaps it's cutting back on a particular commitment that drains your energy and focus. Identify it, act to eliminate it, change or move it, and ensure that those around you know that they should not disturb you. I remember the story of John Wesley's mother, Susanna, who had 10 children. She advised them that when they saw her with her apron over her head, that meant that she was in prayer and couldn't be disturbed, no matter what. She was fully devoted to her walk with Christ and prayed for her children and knowledge in the Word, no matter how hard life was. And we can go read up about the effect that her prayers had on the children and the effect that they had on the church as we know it and on the spreading of the gospel. Let those around you know when your apron is over your head and that they should not distract you, no matter what. Your relationship with God will flourish and God will honor you for the sacrifice. But also remember, the challenge isn't about adding more to your already hectic schedule. It's about making room for what truly matters. It's about discovering the limitless blessings and joy that comes from being fully present with God. We read in Matthew 12 that Jesus talks about the driving out of demons, and He says in verse 43, "When an unclean spirit goes out of a man, he goes through dry places, seeking rest and finds none. Then he says, I will return to my house from which I came. And when he comes, he finds it empty, swept, and put in order. Then he goes and takes with him 7 other spirits more wicked than himself, and they enter and dwell there. And the last state of that man is worse than the first." We need to be sure to not just get rid of the bad habits and time wasting. We need to ensure that we fill it with the most important thing: spending time with God. God is more interested in spending time with you and you getting to know Him than He is in your achievements or your works, even if it is in His body. So let's learn from Judas and Martha's mistakes and examples and choose not to miss out on the divine moments. Let's learn from Mary's example and prioritize the one thing that is truly necessary. Let's make time for God and watch as our lives are transformed. And who knows, maybe one day we'll look back and tell funny stories about how we used to be so preoccupied with trivial matters and missed out on the miracles unfolding right before our eyes, and maybe walking into a lamppost. Let's choose to live a life filled with the laughter of joy, the peace of God's presence, and the satisfaction of knowing that we never missed a single opportunity to be with Him. Thank you for joining me today. Remember, you are loved, you are cherished, and you are called to experience the fullness of life in God's embrace, and to share this with your loved ones and also those you do not know. Now go out there and make time for what truly matters. God bless you all.